All right, so I think something which is going to be increasingly more prevalent as we kind of move towards the summer months, especially with now kind of 21st of June seeming like it could be the way out of lockdown and life back to normal, so to speak, combined with kind of the gyms opening a little bit beforehand, hopefully on the 12th of April, is inevitably quickly going back to that kind of time of year when everyone's looking to prepare for their holidays, get in shape. And what comes along with that is, unfortunately, a lot of people dieting with potentially not the most efficient starting points, and as a
Hmm.
result, quickly ending up on very low food and very high expenditure. So let's take a moment to kind of reflect on reasons for fat loss and maybe kind of establishing more efficient fat loss starting points.
Yeah. So I'm going to put the brakes on straight away and maybe give a little bit of harsh reality and say to anyone listening that's choosing you to go for fat loss, why? Why now are you choosing to lose body fat? Are you choosing to lose body fat based on the new updates, the fact that we'll be able to have a normal social life again? If that's you, if that's the case, then again, question why you're truly doing it. Why have you chosen now? Are you doing it for yourself or are you doing it for other people? Do you, again, question yourself, do you see your self-value is worth to how you look, what the scale says, where your body fat's at? Because if that's you, then before considering to go into a fat loss phase, you might need to work on your relationship with yourself. And that's critical because otherwise, again, you might be able to lose the body fat, but you're going to be more likely to pick extreme, unsustainable methods. And again, if after you finish dieting, because you haven't picked a sustainable method, you'd be more likely to get it back. But because you've tied your self-worth to where your body fat's at or what the scale says or, how you think other people judge you, uh, again, what's going to happen to mental health when you start to gain some of the body fat back? It's going to go downhill very, very fast. And again, it's just going to create this really negative cycle. This is where you can start to get into the restrict binge cycles, just a lot of really negative consequences. A lot of anxiety, depression can start to form. It doesn't sound like choosing to lose fat can lead to all these things, but if you have the wrong reasons for trying to lose fat, if you're doing it for other people, this is the serious consequences that can happen. And, so you just have to ensure before starting a fat loss phase, you have a good reason. And really, there are two good reasons for your health or you're doing it for yourself. But if you're doing it for other people, again, this way you need to take a step back, improve your relationship with yourself first. And then after you've done that, then it's okay to go into a fat loss phase. But just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. That's the critical thing to understand first.
I think as an extension of that, I would even also consider how, as kind of looking at reasons a little further, kind of how serious does this reason, kind of impact your kind of approach to fat loss and how
Mm-hmm.
lean you need to be? Because going back to your idea of kind of doing this for others and kind of your self-worth and basing things potentially on other people's opinion, or more so what you perceive to be other people's opinion, because especially
Yeah.
a lot of people
Yes.
trying to get lean on holiday, are thinking, yeah, I need to look good on the beach, look good by the poolside, because others are going to judge me if I'm not looking that good. But
Mm-hmm.
are you even basing it on other people's opinions, or are you actually just worried of what other people's opinions might be? Because
Yeah.
odds are it's probably not even other people's opinions. It's just what you're kind of perceiving them to be. And, you know, do you really need to be that lean and embark on a pretty strict and serious fat loss phase if your goal is to look good on a holiday or just for the summer, as opposed to, people who are maybe looking to do like a competition prep or a photo shoot? That, as you're kind of saying, more reasons for yourself, especially when kind of looking at, then we can even kind of get into right and wrong reasons to kind of compete and stuff. But when people are kind of thinking about what the end goal is, consider why one has that goal, if it's actually necessary, and how we can almost kind of gauge our fat loss phase around that.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of with kind of the goals things kind of wrapped up, maybe you kind of want to give an insight into how how these more efficient starting points should look for those who are ready to kind of or think they're ready to embark on a fat loss cycle. Because as we kind of will go into, some people may not actually be in the most efficient position to really see that through in a simple and sustainable manner.
Yeah. So actually leading off that, again, as I said, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you're more likely to be a bit more extreme and pick unsustainable methods, probably have way too low calories, way too high output. And again, that's going to lead to more likely to regain the weight. And every time you go through these cycles, it actually becomes harder to diet. So the first question we can say to start an efficient point is, what does your diet and history look like? Are you someone that's always trying to diet? If that's the case, we need, it's not the time for you to diet. You probably need to spend a lot longer and a long time actually doing the opposite, actually trying to eat a lot more food to create a much efficient or a more efficient diet start point. So, if you start on higher calories and your calories up here, then you have, and this is your endpoint, you have all this room to play with. If you're starting with your calories down here, you've got this room to play with. What's going to give you more time from here to here or here to here? So that's really important to understand first, is that in terms of, time and length of the diet, if you're starting on higher calories, it's just going to give you more time to do what you need to do and get as much fat off as you need to get off. But that's just one aspect. If we look at the other aspect, there's also, if you're eating more calories, you're going to have way more freedom and more flexibility, and it's going to allow for a better social life and better social health. Again, how these things impact mental health is massive, really, really important. And, if you're eating more and you're going out for meals, you're enjoying life with your friends, it's going to feel way less like you're dieting. One of the key aspects to sustainable fat loss is picking the method that feels like the least effort. Now, that's the key word, is feels like least effort, because there's always going to be effort. That needs to be said. But again, if you're enjoying your social life, it's going to feel like a lot less effort than if you're staying at home, being miserable, not being able to hang out with your friends and just not enjoying the quality of your life. Yeah. That's a lot more effort. It's not sustainable. It's not enjoyable. And that's really key. So higher calories means more time for fat loss. It means more enjoyability, more flexibility, more freedom, better social life. Then if we look at the next aspect and we look at things like energy levels and performance, if you're eating more, you can have better energy levels and you're going to be able to perform better. Better performance means better progress, means better results. And so, if you're eating less, then what's going to happen in performance? It's going to, it's going to go downhill very quickly. Bad performance means worse progress, means worse results. And then lastly, again, the common saying of eat less, move more is, first of all, it's just terrible advice. It's so generic, so vague, but it's also not really how the human body works. If you naturally eat less, your body likes homeostasis. It likes to stay regulated. If you eat less, then your output is going to be less, even if you're not aware of it. So it'd be, again, so, you could take control and say, well, I'm going to set myself a step target, so I'm still active, okay? But if you're eating less, then achieving that step goal is going to feel like more effort. Again, feeling like more effort means less likely to succeed in the long run. So again, that's already a bad start. But such things such as how you even talk or even blink starts to slow down, things that are out of your control. And so that might not seem like much, but over the course of a day, over the course of days, over the course of weeks,
all adds
that
up.
Expenditure adds up and it makes a difference. So again, you could create, say, a 500 calorie deficit by eating more and expending more, or you could create a 500 calorie deficit by eating less, but you're also going to expend less as well. So you'd be, up here versus down here. Again, this zone down here, worse performance, worse social life, with less freedom, less flexibility, less energy. This circle up here, the reverse, better performance, better energy, better social life, more freedom, more flexibility, better quality of life, more enjoyability, more likely to succeed. And it's not just about where you're starting with a diet point, it's about where you're finishing with a diet point too. So up here, you're going to finish at a better diet and start point, or finishing point, I should say. So these are all just key considerations before you start a fat loss phase of, where you're trying to go, how long is it going to take, and where do you want to end up? And, can you create a fat loss environment which is sustainable for you? And these are the key questions you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, you're kind of looking at the idea of things becoming harder kind of every time you kind of go back to trying to lose fat, and potentially looking at kind of the binging and restricting cycle a little more, is people don't understand that this is perhaps actually a lot harder than they might think, because we're looking at it becoming psychologically harder. Again, going back to what we mentioned briefly at the beginning about kind of relationship with yourself and relationship with food, and kind of how you even just associate things with diets psychologically. And then also becomes obviously physiologically harder, because then we're looking at potentially actually doing, especially if we are dieting on such low calories, for starters, kind of the damage that you can do to your body in a magnitude of ways. And then also potentially just kind of ruining your body composition, and over time actually being in a much worse starting point and just body composition in general than you'd be happy with. Because what some people don't consider is even things like, you know, if we are looking at something like a more binging and restricting cycle, is if you're dieting and you lose, you know, a bit of fat and a bit of muscle, and then you end up perhaps not having started with an efficient starting point and lacking a sustainable approach, is then are you kind of binging out of it and then not really gaining much muscle back, gaining a lot more fat, and then repeating that, losing a bit of fat and a bit of muscle, and gaining a lot more fat and not much muscle. And over time, you're left with much worse body composition, which is obviously just going to make it even harder when we consider kind of the impact on lean muscle and kind of your expenditure and metabolism. So we're looking at a multitude of factors here of why this really should be considered seriously before you kind of embark on a fat loss phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that we're not going to get into this, but that could definitely lead down the road of, you know, how that can then start to form poor metabolic health, and then how that can lead to clinical disease as well. So, you know, like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, that sort of thing. That's a massive rabbit hole, so we'll not get into that. But just a quick side note is, again, you mentioned obviously, you know, how fat loss is physiologically harder every time you attempt it. Well, that's because, you know, the way fat loss works is you have fat cells which basically expand and shrink, and that's it. That's how fat loss works. But every time you rapidly regain fat, so again, if you've had a really restrictive fat loss phase where you've just, you know, crash dieted, if you rapidly regain that fat, you can lead to actual new fat cells being created. And so again, that's why it just makes it so much harder to lose the fat every time you go through these cycles. So that's a really key aspect to understand. So hopefully there we've really summed up why you've got to have the right reason for fat loss, why it's so important to create an efficient diet and start point, and why maybe it's, if you want to do a fat loss phase, maybe it's a wise idea to actually spend some time eating more food, eating more calories, and building up your calorie level first. So if I had to leave you with one thing, it is that you should eat more and move more.
Yeah, I think kind of to sum all that up, sometimes, especially, you know, when you do have a goal in mind, it's easy to push yourself harder and harder, but sometimes a little bit less is more in kind of the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I think that kind of covers it all up quite well. Hey everyone, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more.
If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to check out the latest Fitbit here and the latest podcast here. Thanks for watching, guys and girls.